Chapter 14. Envy. How could that be? Eddie? How could that be? I didn't stop to think. I just typed, Eddie? R-U-T? Are you there? Dummy, there's no way. Still, I held my breath. A reply popped up. WTHIT. Who the hell is this? My breath gushed out. Great. Some irate survivor. What could they do to me? Take away my birthday? I typed again. Eli. Again, an instant reply. How did you get his username? Lose it before I find out. WTHUR. My heart sped up. Eddie, it's Eli, swear. Nothing. I added more. We're in compound, near cabin. I didn't have to wait long. How do you know about that? The tremor in my hands made it difficult to type as fast as I wanted. Camping, had fight about who in Dad's plane first, kit in an RV, wheezing. I didn't want to write what happened next. I skipped to, we had to go. A few minutes passed. AYTMTV, and you're telling me this, why? Because? I groaned. 'Cause true. You read it in paper. What was he talking about? I scrolled back up to see the whole conversation. Crap, I provided all the details. I could be IMing anybody. My stomach clenched. It could even be Dad. Or could it? One way to find out. What was in a red cooler at picnic with Graham? The screen stayed blank. Then, Eli? I wasn't falling for it. What was in cooler? Strawberry mochi. One of my hands went over my mouth. No one could have known that except Eddie or Graham. My fingers flew. Oh my God, Eddie? His answer came fast. Yes, alive and smiling. My eyes teared up. Where are you? Are you alone? What was he talking about? We're in compound. We escaped attack. What attack? What did he mean by that? Again, I wondered if it was really Eddie, or if it just was someone screwing with me. Nukes. Dad knew, got us in compound, but you and Graham didn't make it back? As I typed, I thought of more questions. How did you survive? Where are you? The reply took a few minutes. Eli, don't know what you are talking about. Graham and I home, Seattle. We saw a fire from cabin, fire department came, it all gone. Inside the office, inches away from me, Dad's chair creaked. I froze. The music still blared. My hands started up again, trembling. What gone? RV. Cop said RV crashed into plane, burned. A funeral, nothing to bury. Fire? Funeral? Both my hands clamped over my mouth. I rocked back and forth, forcing a scream back down. No, it wasn't true. That wasn't what happened. Eli. R-U-T? Are you there? My breaths became gasps as I typed, trying to prove it wasn't true. Not dead. Here in compound. Alive. Dad started RV. We ran here. Where compound? I don't know. Where we camped, but then we drove and ran. There wasn't a reply right away. I prayed I wasn't making too much noise, that Dad wouldn't come out. Come on. Eli, this is Graham. Are you all okay? Clea and your sisters? Tell me where you are. Graham? My Graham? My eyes misted over. All fine in compound. We thought you all died in the fire. No, it's a lie. Dad said you and E died. We have to stay here 15 years, and... I couldn't say any more. It was too hard. I hit the send button. Graham had her own form of I am speak. Lying SOBs, son of a bitch. We will get you out. I didn't know what to say in reply, so I didn't type anything. E here, Graham freaking, yelling at Els to call 911. Thought compound was just myth. Tabloids write about Dad. Major nutcase. What tabloids? Question marks. After we thought you dead, report from some secret source. Dad's biological mom crazy. It made so much sense. All those times when he wouldn't sleep for days, and then the times when that's all he did, all the talking to himself, only he wasn't, not to him. He heard someone talking back. Get you out, bro, swear. I held my head in my hands, thinking. It was true, everything. My father lied, keeping us down here with lies. That night when his hand smelled like fuel, and he was so out of breath, he'd been setting the RV on fire. The low battery light warning flashed. I ignored it. The facts started to sink in. I wanted to run to my father. Make him let us out. Then I realized something. Dad wouldn't let us out. We were prisoners. You have to find us. Eddie's reply was short, but meant everything to me. BTWBO. Be there with bells on. The low battery warning flashed again. No! Dad's chair squeaked and the music went dead. I slammed the laptop shut. My stomach clenched again. I didn't want to lose the connection with Eddie. I didn't want to be alone again. I tried to reassure myself. Now that we'd been in touch once, we could do it again. I'd find out everything I could, everything that might help Eddie find us. If we worked together, we could do it. He'd saved me before. He could do it again. The door opened. Dad scanned the hallway. Eli, need help? He must have seen the confused look on my face. Oh, yeah, just some math again. I think I figured it out. I held up the legal pad. He stood there clenching and unclenching his hands. What's wrong? Nothing. Feels like pins and needles. Must be too much typing. What's this? Before I could stop him, he lifted the computer from my lap. No, I grabbed onto it. He didn't let go. We stood there, both gripping the laptop, a mostly mental tug of war. His head tilted a bit. Where did you get this? Eddie's room. As soon as I said it, I knew I should have lied. But from the look on his face, I think he'd already sensed the answer. I think he was mad at himself for forgetting it was there. I held my breath and shut my eyes. The I am conversations were still on the screen for him to see. I heard the click as it shut down. My eyes opened. The battery was dead. I breathed out. Dad shrugged. This one is nearly obsolete. It doesn't have the functions you need. I'll take care of it for you. I couldn't risk raising his suspicions any more before I found out what I needed to know. My hands let go. I was only able to watch as my connection to Eddie disappeared with Dad into his office. He came back out and handed me another laptop, a different model. Then he retreated once again. I didn't even have to look at the laptop to know there had been no connection to the internet. I hugged my knees. My head dropped onto them and my eyes closed. It was all true. My own father kept us there, prisoners. Without that laptop, I wouldn't be able to tell Eddie anything to help him find us. There were two things of which I was certain. First, I was on my own. Second, my father had become the enemy. Maybe he always had been. Furious, I wanted to barge into his office and demand he let us out. I wanted to scream at him, hit him. I jumped up, my hands turned into fists as I faced his door. My breath was shallow and fast as I stood there, ready to fight for us all, make us let him out. It took every ounce of self-control in me to walk to the other way, to go to my room and shut the door. I couldn't let him know what I knew. Not yet. I needed to get back in touch with Eddie. There hadn't been enough time to tell him what I knew. I thought about it. What did I know that could help him find us? Nothing. I had no clue where the hatch was. Dad had mentioned there were GPS coordinates and a code. Knowing him, they were only in his brain. He never liked a paper trail. No way would he tell me what I needed to know. Not straight out. I would have to find out on my own. The world was fine. Dad knew. He knew that it had gone on without us. That it was going on without us every minute we stayed down here. He had to be insane. Nothing else made sense. My dread mingled with hope. Eddie and Graham were alive. I wanted to run, tell everyone, but I knew there was only one person I could trust. The door to Lexi's room was slightly ajar. The TV was on. I pushed the door open a little so I could see in. At first I didn't see her. She was leaning on her footboard on her bed, arms around her knees. She stared at the screen. I figured it was her horror movie routine. But her face was shiny. Was she crying? No way. The DVD player was on, and I recognized the movie, A Little Princess. One of the premieres we went to in Hollywood. Not my favorite, but I knew it was based on a classic book and it had a happy ending. Over the sound of the movie, I heard Lexi take a loud, ragged breath. Just like she did with horror movies, she stared at the screen engrossed. But for this movie, her eyes weren't blank. They were full of so many feelings I couldn't start to name them all. It didn't seem right to be a witness. I felt invasive, like an intruder. Back in the hall, I gently pulled the door shut and left. Maybe that was when Lexi let it all out. She watched A Little Princess, the one happy ending she allowed herself. Who else was there for me to turn to? I couldn't tell Mom. Not yet. She was already stressed out, pregnant. I wasn't sure she'd believe me. Even if she did, it was way too risky for her to confront my father. She was in no condition for it. And did she even have a foothold with him anymore? Maybe if I had found this out years ago, when they were in love, when he still doted on her. Not at this point. They scarcely spoke. I didn't understand how he could do this to us, the people he was supposed to love the most. When did he start hating us? Because he must have hated us if he could even consider doing this. It was the only explanation I had that made sense. There was a slim chance he had confided at Mom at some point, told her something that might help. I felt so stupid for waiting so long to question things, for being this much of a sheep. listening to everything Dad said, believing him, worshiping, no more, no way. I was done. Chapter 15. Sleep eluded me. I spent most of the night staring up into the starry sky of my ceiling, trying to come up with answers. But in all that sleeplessness, I made a decision to seek the answers I needed. The next morning, I found Mom in the family room, knitting another pink and blue blanket. Candles glowed. The scent of flowers lingered. Music played on the stereo, a sonata for cello and piano, Shostakovich. I sat down on a couch opposite her. The soft, familiar brush of my hair falling on either side of my face gave me strength, but it still took a minute to get the words out. Mom, do you know the code to the door? Her knitting needles froze as she stared at me. How do you know about that? Dad told me. Her hands dropped to her lap, a ball of pink yarn unrolling onto the floor. She seemed annoyed. Now why in this world would he tell you that? I explained, then I asked again. Do you know the code to the door? She harumphed. I think that's what the sound would be called, like a sarcastic cough. Right. That's only in your father's mind, and probably in his office. Do you know where? She started knitting again, her stitches quick and precise. Probably in one of his computers. I leaned my head back on the couch, trying to think. Mom, what if something happens to him? How would we get out? She set down her knitting. Don't talk like that. Nothing's going to happen to your father, Eli. He's as healthy as a horse. Her tone was not one of certainty, and her words were rushed. Mom? She shook her head a bit. He's healthier than a horse, probably. And if he thought he was going to die, God forbid, he'd tell me everything. Somehow I doubted it. Would he? Her brow furrowed. What's going on? My eyes shut briefly. I rubbed my temples, trying to summon more energy. Mom, I found something out last night, something you might not believe. Tell me. My explanation included everything about the laptop from Eddie's room and its wireless capabilities. I paused for a moment before getting to the crucial element. Mom, I talked to Eddie. Her knitting slid to the floor. You what? The internet works. I IM'd Eddie and Graham. Dad's been lying to us since we got here. I related everything Eddie and Graham had to say. Mom just sat there, mouth gaping. I needed her to trust me. Please say that you believe me. Her face crumpled. I knew for certain then and there that she truly had no idea what Dad had done. She started to cry. Please, Mom. She nodded, reaching out for my hand. I didn't move. Her hand dropped in her lap. When she could speak again, she had a lot of questions. I answered the ones I could. There were many I couldn't. Eli, we've got to go to your father and tell him it's over. We know and we're leaving. I stood up and started to pace in front of the fireplace. Do you think it's that easy? He'll just throw up his hands and say, you got me, and then let us go? Her head was down. No, it won't be that easy. He's insane. Eli, he's not insane. I protested, telling her what Eddie had said about Dad's biological mother. Mom shook her head. That's not true. It's an old rumor, one I even approached your father about before you were born. He found out who his biological parents were a long time ago. And? A couple of academically inclined teenagers too stupid to use birth control, and too young and full of potential to give it all up to raise a baby. No one was crazy. I was frustrated at not getting my point across. Mom, look at the facts. Dad doesn't sleep for days, then that's all he does. Mom shrugged. I don't think that's an uncommon thing with creative geniuses, and it's not enough to make him certifiable. I groaned and covered my face with my hands. Eli, I'd love to say yes, that he's insane, but it's simply too easy and safe. How convenient would that be? To explain it away to lunacy. Her head tilted to one side. He was lucid when he planned all this. He's still lucid. That's what scares me. I dropped my hands to look at her. She turned towards me, her face red and tear-streaked. Yes, I'm scared. I said it. We're in more danger now than we've ever been, Eli, and he knows we know. If he knows we know, he may get desperate. I don't believe he's crazy, but he's capable of doing something irrational. I held my arms to the sides. More irrational than all this? More irrational than every moment of the last 6 years? Her expression wasn't quite a smile. You've got a point, my boy, she gasped. Oh, you okay? Her hands went to her bump. The baby's kicking all the time. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. I refuse to have another of my children born in this godforsaken place. We need to see what we can find out without your father suspecting we're fishing around. So let's keep it between us. I don't think you should tell Lexi or Therese. Tell me what? Lexi stepped inside the room. She looked fresh and yellow, her dark hair cascading loose. Nothing, sweetie. Right. Lexi sunk into the love seat opposite us. I heard you say, don't tell Lexi or Therese. I leaned against the mantel. I should have told her what I knew last night. Now is not the time for this, okay? Just trust me, it doesn't matter anymore. Lexi crossed her arms, glaring at Mom. I know there are a billion things you're keeping from me. Tell me. Lex. Eli, she nearly snarled at me. Stay out of it, Mom. Tell me. Tell me what you don't want me to know. Sweetie, it's about the code. What code? For the door. We were talking about the code, and that only your father knows what it is. Lexi rolled her eyes. What's the big secret? Mom held out a hand to Lexi. We didn't want you to worry about it. Please don't tell Therese, okay? Her eyes narrowed. I don't believe you. I cleared my throat. Lex, it's true. No one else knows. Stupid, I get that. I think you were talking about something else. Mom picked up her knitting again, the red metal needles clicking in her hands. Lexi glared at her. Look at me. Lexi leaned forward, her face flushed. Her voice was deep, harsh. I hate that you just tell me something and I'm supposed to take it. I hate that you're the queen and we have to do everything you say. All you did was marry a rich guy and have his kids. That's it. That's all you are. Any sympathy I might have felt for her the night before evaporated. Shut up, I screamed. Mom looked at Lexi. I know you don't mean that. Lexi turned her glare to me. You're her lapdog. You do whatever she says. I retaliated by calling her a name. I didn't bother to use Mandarin. Eli, don't talk to your sister like that. Dad entered the room, his glance bouncing between the three of us. What's all the yelling? I could hear you down the hall. Lexi pouted. They won't tell me what they're talking about. She looked from one parent to the other. You both treat me like a child. Mom fidgeted with her knitting. Dad scratched his chin. Lexi, your mother and I know what's best for you. For all of you. With all that I knew, it was impossible to just stand there and say nothing. You mean you think you know what's best? I do know what's best. Before he said it, Dad hesitated. Barely, but I saw it, which gave me the strength to say what I needed to. I don't think only you knowing the code for the door is the best thing, Dad. And who else should know it? You? He laughed. My hands clenched. Eli, you were young and impulsive. One bad day and you'd be wanting out. If only he knew. I went for it. Why do you get to be the one to make all the decisions? Dad's expression changed, became hard. Why? Because I built this place. It's mine. I should make all the decisions. I couldn't stop. And the rest of us? You own us too? Dad shook his head. He set a hand on his stomach, wincing. That's not what I meant. Bull. This wasn't how I planned it. Too late. My emotions were running the show. I got onto the internet. I talked to Eddie. You lied to us from the beginning. There was no nuclear attack. It was all a lie. We could have left here any time, any frickin' time. My tone was a screech by the time I got done. Mom didn't even tell me to watch my language as her eyes squeezed shut and she gripped her knitting needles so hard that her knuckles turned white. Lexi stood up, her forehead wrinkled as she processed what I'd said. She sank into the couch next to Mom, apparently forgetting her animosity of moments before. I suddenly wished I'd told Lexi about Eddie and the internet before. She deserved to know. But I wasn't done. When I think of everything you made us believe, the things you would have made us do, I looked at Lexi before turning back to Dad, and none of them were necessary, not even one. This place wasn't our sanctuary. This was your world, your twisted world. Dad looked from Mom to Lexi, then back to me. His face held no expression. I wanted to save my family from the largest menace of modern age. I'm twisted for wanting to save my family. But there was no nuclear attack to save us from. His voice was calm. You don't know that. You have no way of knowing what the truth is and what isn't. How could he say that? I do. I talked to Eddie and Graham and they told me everything. I trailed off, sounding like a little kid trying to talk his way out of getting grounded for something insane, like shaving the family cat. Dad scratched his head. I'm not sure what kind of person you've become if you fault me that much for ensuring the survival of my wife and children. I know what happened, my voice quavered, with only served to make me more determined. I was not going to back down. You did this to us. You set it all up. There were no nukes. I know it. I can't prove it, but I know it's the truth. And now you have to give me the code so we can get out. My hair had fallen in front of my eyes, and I slowly pushed it back. I forced myself to calm down, sounding rational for my last plea. Please, just let us go, Dad. After all this time, you owe us that. His eyebrows lowered, and his voice was thunder. I am your father. I owe you nothing. Oh, my God. Mom stood up, her face red, her hands trembling. Is it true? Dad didn't look at her. Mom dropped back down to the couch beside Lexi, who was crying. Is it, Rex? Was this all a joke to you? He met her eyes. No, Clea, not a joke. It was never that. What about me? Mom shook her head in disbelief. You told me my son and my mother were dead, and I believed you. My God, all these years, I trusted you. Their eyes locked. She was the first to look away. Dad gazed at her a moment more, then crossed his arms, his shoulders slumped. No one is leaving. You can't. Okay, so Eli thinks he had a chat with someone. That doesn't change a thing. The door isn't opening up until the time is up. We've got 9 years left. It's my plan, and I'm not changing it. Mom put her hands over her face and spoke through them. Why would you leave Eddie out? I didn't plan to. Dad's voice was softer than before. He stepped backward until he bumped into a bar stool and climbed onto it, gripping the edge of the bar for balance. I just wanted to leave your mother out, so I left the kitten for Therese to find. I knew she'd bring it along, and I knew your mother would think back to run back to the cabin for Eddie's medicine. That was key, I think. He shrugged. To leave part of the family out there to mourn for us. It made it all the more believable and tragic. However, I didn't plan on Eddie going with her. He held a hand out towards my mom. Please believe me, Clea. That hurt me as much as it did you, but it was too late by then. Mom dropped her hands and walked over to him. But I didn't know. Her face was so red, her eyes were nearly slits. I'd never seen her that angry. You told me my son and my mother were dead, and I believed you. All these years, I believed you. Tears spilled onto her cheeks. She stepped forward and slapped him, hard. Dad put a hand up to his cheek. His voice was almost pleading. Believe me, that broke my heart, seeing your pain, but the deception was necessary for my plan. I wanted to kill him. Some plan? You screwed up, Dad. The feed, the bulbs. His voice was a whisper. Those weren't entirely an accident. Mom stepped back and grabbed Lexi's hand. I couldn't speak. I wanted to create the need for an alternate food support source. I'd mentioned it to my planners, but I didn't know for sure how they would make it happen. At the time the livestock died, I was so frustrated. Nothing had been going as I'd planned, and I wondered if I should give up. But then I realized it was the perfect opportunity. His cheek was angry red. Those issues created the perfect need for an alternate food source. When I came to call the Donner effect, Lexi was incredulous. Like those pioneer people who all ate each other? You would have let us die? Dad's expression softened. No, of course not. Don't you think the world thought the people on the Oregon Trail were crazy? To leave solid, contented lives for some stupid quest? They weren't crazy, they were brave. Brave and determined. Our life we were living, our oh-so-easy life, didn't give any of you the chance to be brave or determined. He stopped to scratch his neck. No, you would have grown up not knowing what it's like to have to work, to strive. I wanted to see if we could do it, if our family would really have what it takes to survive. He paused for a moment. I have enough money to do anything, go anywhere, and to take my children anywhere, buy them anything they want. How long would that have kept us satisfied? Before I even married your mother, I'd already discovered that about money. Eventually you run out of things to buy. No, that's not quite it. He seemed to search for the right words. Eventually you run out of things to buy that truly make you happy. Lexi broke in, speaking in sobs. You had all of us. Didn't we make you happy? Dad pulled a roll of antacid tablets out of his pocket. They were crumbling in small pieces, so he sprinkled the remnants into his hand. He raised his hand to his mouth and chewed before continuing. Yes, Lexi, of course. You all mean more to me than anything. I wanted to show you the world. But what would be left once you had seen everything, done everything? He leaned an elbow on the bar. I didn't want you to feel like I did, that the world had a limit on new experiences. I didn't want you to feel like all the pioneering is over. The world out there doesn't provide challenges like this. No one has ever done this before. I wanted us to be pioneers. I wanted to prove that we can do it. We will be the only people to theoretically survive a nuclear winter. That's it? I shrugged when I would have rather screamed. Couldn't we have just hopped a flight to the moon? Any idiot with $1 million will be able to do that soon. Dad chuckled a little. Oh, come on, there's always a bottom line. Even as we speak, I'm working on more conventional, readily available prototype for the compound, because once we emerge and share our story, everyone will want one of these for themselves. He spread his arms out wide for emphasis, then dropped them to his side. For their families, so they can survive, and they will thank us for proving it can be done as they follow in our footsteps, just like the people who followed those first pioneers into the West. I groaned. And what? The supplements were just meant to be collateral damage? Dad shook his head. I never would have touched them. Not in that way. They're our children, he nodded at Mom, as much as any of you are. Lexi stood up. How can you say that? She flung one arm in the direction of the hallway. They've been stuck in that yellow room since they were born. And what's so bad about the yellow room? What did you have as a child that they don't? Everything, Lexi cried. A real school, friends? Friends? Dad rolled his eyes. None of you kids ever had a friend that wasn't there for your money or your last name. Mom wiped her eyes as she spoke up. There's something to be said for fresh air and sunshine. Dad nodded. Yes, but they've also never seen violence on TV or been snowed over by advertisements. They don't sit in front of the television and beg for everything they see. They aren't brats like, oh God, like me. They weren't brats like me. Lexi gasped. Like us? Is that what you're going to say? Dad turned to me. Do you know when this compound turned for me? I didn't understand. I began building this place solely for survival when you boys were born. I truly hoped we'd never have to enter it as a family. In the beginning, that's all it was, a safety net. Do you want to know when it turned into something else? I wasn't sure if I did or not. Yes. You were 7. We went to the Rockies after Christmas. My breath caught in my throat, remembering. Our house in Colorado was part of the Rockies Club, a spectacular gated community with its own private ski hill. Our house was the biggest and most elaborate, the only one with a heated mile-long driveway that would always stay clear for Dad to get to the helicopter pad in case he needed to leave for business. Remember, Eli? I nodded. I got a call from D.C. during a heavy snowfall. I planned to fly out the next morning after the snow stopped. I didn't want to remember. I went outside after dark to the propane tank, the 40,000-gallon tank that heated the driveway, so Dad could go wherever he needed to, so he could leave us again, screw up another family vacation for work, screw up my plans for the next day. I wanted him to stay, wanted him to watch me on my new snowboard, wanted him to make hot chocolate afterward, so I turned off the valve to the tank. It was easy. The caretaker had shown me one day so I would quit bothering him, and in the morning, I couldn't get out to the driveway, remember, Eli? And you confessed. You cried, said you only wanted me to stay. You wanted me to be with you all the time, every day. I covered my eyes with one hand. I realized I was screwing up, leaving you all so much for work, and I didn't want to anymore. I wanted to be with you all the time, like you wanted to be with your son. Like you wanted me to be with you, son. And once again, I'd forgotten what I wanted. I had gotten what I wanted. I dropped my hand and looked at my father. No way was I taking the blame. This doesn't explain the rest of it. The food, the babies, God, the cloning. I looked at Lexi. Lexi looked back at me, her face shiny with tears. He sighed. That was merely a matter of seeing how far you would all go to survive. Mom let out a cry. She launched herself towards Dad, pummeling him with her fists. He shoved her away, not unkindly. Still, I lost it. With every ounce of my strength and rage, I punched him in the face. I'd never hit anyone before. The feel of his bones and flesh connecting with my hands sickened me, and it hurt. But touching him didn't bother me, or stop me from hitting him again. With my extra 5 inches of height and a good 30 pounds on him, it was no contest. Lexi jumped onto my back, trying to stop me as blood spurted from his nose. Her arms were tight around my neck, her breathing heavy and warm in my ear, her body a dead weight on my back. I paused at the sensation, wanting to freak out, to run away, but it wasn't enough to stop me. Dad lost his balance and fell off the stool. It looked like he was in slow motion. His head bounced on the floor. He slammed to a stop in the oak bar and then was still. With Lexi on my back, I straddled him. His neck was hot under my hands as I watched him through my veil of hair and gripping tighter, wanting to choke the life from him. Lexi's arms grew tighter on my neck until I couldn't breathe. She pulled me back away from him as she screamed, "Stop it, stop it." Sweat dripped down from my back. My heart raced. I'd been touched, and I had touched, and I was still alive. Only thing was, I didn't know if Dad still was.